So I'm going to move into the next panel, where I'm going to welcome incredible leaders when it comes to the role of boards. And now it's time to move from reflection to action. And I'm very, very, very honored to welcome on stage Marie-Claire Daveu, a non-executive board member of Crédit Agricole NG Le Ponant, and known also as her role of Chief Sustainability and Institutional Affairs at Kering. Please, Marie-Claire, if you're ready, come on stage. I am also very honored to welcome on stage Laurence Debrou. Laurence has been a board member for several years in companies that I admire so much, like Novo Nordisk, but also Exor, Randstad, and many more. And she's a leader who truly uses purpose as a compass, every day, everywhere, and with everyone. Please, Laurence, welcome on stage.
Laurence, welcome on stage.
Personne. Paul is grabbing everyone, you know how he is. And last but not least, because this journey is not that easy, right? So it's a learning journey. And to learn every single day, we are very pleased to welcome on stage our dear partner from INSEAD, the Dean of INSEAD, Francisco Veloso. I think this is mine. Yes? We may need water for my guests. I only have one glass with water, sorry. And Nicole, Sylvie Nicole, please welcome on stage. Sylvie is an executive leader at Henkel, and she is representing the executive side because it's all about governance. And it was important for us to understand also what is the executive perspective on the role of boards. Welcome on stage. So with this unprecedented time, I'm going to start by asking you maybe, Laurence, how do you see the pivotal role of boards in this moment?
Thank you. And I did find the previous presentation by Paul fascinating, and a lot of it about education we'll come back to. But why it is pivoting? Well, a well-functioning board for me in any circumstance is really a board that is a constructive, critical friend to management. So there is this notion of supporting and challenging on the right topics. So why particularly pivotal now? Because every role, every stakeholder's role is pivotal because that's a pivotal moment. So everyone needs to play their role at best. And I would say, I'm not representing executives here, but I do feel for the many, many conflicting injunctions and for the huge pressures that executives are under. So there is a moment for board to actually keep a cool head, stay calm, and help executive keep the compass on strategy and on execution, particularly on that topic. So that's how I would define
Thank
it.
you.
And we will come back on how.
Yes, of course. So that's a good transition to you, Sylvie, because representing the executive board here, how do you see the role of board in this specific time?
So thanks for having me first. Very happy to be there. I would say the first thing is that the board defines the purpose and the strategy that the team has to follow. So for us, the purpose is pretty clear and fitting to the times, pioneers at heart for the good of generations. That's the message we communicate to the team. That's how we want them to operate business. So the how, the direction that you set, I think is one of the big responsibilities of the board. And the second one is to create the conditions. facilitate leadership, make sure that all your processes, your recruitment, your training, your leadership culture is aligned for sustainable transformation.
But that is every day, if I may say. Do you have a specific, with your board right now, given the current context and the current challenges, is there anything specific right now happening? Or because your governance is quite stable, because you are very unique also, it's business as usual, if I may say?
Yeah, our governance is pretty unique, as you say, because our main shareholder is a family. So
this makes a big difference.
Voilà, the head of the supervisory board is the chairwoman. She is the 5th generation of the Henkel family. She's ensuring continuity and making sure that the company will still be there in the future. And that makes a huge difference because that sets the tone. It's not about the quarter only. We are also in the DAX, so performance matters. But it's also about how do we transfer the company to the next generation? How do we ensure success, profit, but as well responsibility?
This is so precious to be in a family-owned company. Marie-Claire, this is not the case in several boards where you stand, but how do you see the role of boards in this current context?
First, good morning, everyone. I think today, above all, because we have, I will say, a complex world where the things are changing very fast for the management, it's very important that the board help to have a step back. And so to be sure that, because also the topics are more and more with intelligence artificial, when we speak about climate change, and Paul was mentioning the fact that it's important to train the board, I think if I have only to say one sentence, it's really to help to take a step back and to be sure also that we push about the new topics and not only the current topics that the executive management has already in mind. I will say the current job, but really to say push the boundaries, see what could happen in the next 5 years and in the next 10 years, and depending on the industry, sometimes the executive management, of course, above all when you are listed, you think about the 2 next years, the 3 next years, but I think the board has really to push people to go beyond the classical things.
And how, as a board member, do you step back and really help the leadership team move its perspective for future or sustainable business?
But I think, and you didn't ask the question, but it's a way to answer, it depends also on the composition of the board. And I think it's really important at the board to be sure that you have different kind of profile. Of course, you need men and women, you need people with more experiences, young people, but also people who are coming with financial, of course, but also IT experience, environmental experience, to be sure that at the end of the day, and I like to say in this way, you have also a kind of biodiversity inside the board. And I think you have
it before. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, but it's great. You have a collective intelligence to push people to think also in a matrix approach, because sometimes, and also I am executive, so I know how it works, you are more in only one channel, and you don't think about the complexity, perhaps you think less about interaction, and it's the role of the board to push about it.
Oh, thank you so much. And maybe Francisco, given your role, and INSEAD is not only partnering with us for the program, but is an amazing program to train. And I don't know how many leaders you've trained.
Well, several thousand.
Several thousands. But more than the volume, everyone that I know of is telling me that you're the best program. Why so?
Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. I think that basically it speaks to the core of the elements that have been brought here about the knowledge. But even before going there, I want to stress something that I think is quite important at the board level, which is the choice of leadership. You know, we're talking about the executive and the role of boards, but one of the first key roles that boards have is to choose leadership. Who is leading the company? Not just the CEO, but the boards are typically also involved in the senior management team, the C-suite. And that decision in this day and age is absolutely essential to try to make sure that the right leaders are coming into the company to be able to navigate these difficult times and to make sure that they bring some of these elements that we're talking about, to the forefront. I mean, in terms of the program, that goes to the other parts, which is the knowledge. I mean, what boards need to know is changing so fast, not only because of the longer term, we talked about already in AI, and I'm sure we'll come back to that, sustainability. Paul talked about circularity and regenerative. These are all topics, are all issues that we need, to understand how to bring that discussion into the board to make sure that the executives are looking at that. And many are different topics, to really think about how to put in place a regenerative supply chain, a net positive supply chain is not an easy thing. It's something that really requires, different kinds of mindsets. So how do you think about that? And how do you think about that in a grounded way? And this is quite important for INSEAD, because INSEAD is an intellectually led school. So what we bring to the board programs is what our faculty are looking at and what they're finding that works or doesn't work, the new trends, the new opportunities, the new challenges. And that's what makes it, a really important and attractive program that we're, of course, very proud of.
Thank you so much. I feel so proud to have amazing speakers on my side for this moment. I'm going to ask you a few questions because I think that we all understand that now in this room. And thank you for being everywhere. I don't think there are seats left, but thank you for being there all on the balcony also. I hope you can hear well. I'm going to ask you now specific examples, right? Because we all want to learn, and we all are here convinced about this role of boards. So it's more about what example, what insights, what inspiration, what activities, what actions, who did inspire you, or you've seen that shift happening in the boardroom. Yes?
Okay. So I'm lucky to sit at the board of Novo Nordisk in Denmark. So even though I am not a spokesperson for the company, so you won't hear me quoted, a lot of what I'm describing is actually happening there. I'm going to be the boring one because I'm the chair of audit committee, and I'm going to talk about governance and about, training that muscle of having the right discussion. And I totally agree with Paul and with what you've said. It starts with training, and it's continuous education of the board. And I would say one of the things that I really like is when the board and the executive management are trained together. So board members don't come only with what they know or sometimes with what they like, but really have a common language, a common understanding of what matters to the company. Let's not forget that board members meet, 5, 6, 8 times a year? That's not too much. Things happen. A lot of things happen in between, and that's absolutely normal, but you want to have the right discussions. You want to have the discussion on what is really relevant to that company here and now and is carrying it into the future. And for me, there are a few things that actually regulation imposed to us that were very useful. I actually very, very much like the discussion on double materiality assessment. In some companies, it was just actually translating things that had been discussed for a long time. And even then, even in very good company, we did find that it was worth revisiting it with that framework.
Okay.
But in any case, by having that discussion, not only putting a stamp on very good work made by expert team, and really discussing what made the cut, and also what almost made the cut but didn't make it. That is a part of the discussion that I triggered actually with the audit committee, and I really like. It's like, if something was borderline and you didn't select it, why was that? And can you explain? And can we talk about it? That is something that was very important to me, and I really like that exercise and to share it with the full board. After that, for me, it's a lot into the clear mapping of governance. Who does what? What stays with the full board? Strategic discussion. What goes to the different committee? How do we interact? How do we make sure it's not only outsourcing to a committee, but brought back together?
Governance and
the whole governance circle, and that is, I would really say, it's fully integrated in the governance circle, but we have now data. We used not to have such clear KPIs. We have some KPIs, we have some norms. That's much, much better. Let's not completely disregard storytelling. People need both.
As you say, common language, storytelling, that matters to bring people
Exactly,
together.
because people need to be inspired. It needs to be monitored, but they also need inspiration. So the good thing today is that there is no way a company can get away with only storytelling, but you also need stories.
Thank you so much, Laurence. Maybe Sylvie, yes, I think having your perspective.
Maybe sharing two interesting observations, one more on the supervisory board and one on the executive board, because I have the privilege to be in both. In the supervisory board, our chairwoman realized that we need more time. The topic is complex. There are a lot of new topics popping up permanently on sustainability, so she decided to create a subcommittee of the supervisory board fully dedicated to sustainability, where a few members of the supervisory board come together.
That's good, because
with
this is something
experts.
that, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 4 years, this number of committee doubled.
Exactly, and that really makes a huge difference, because you have the time you need, you can educate, you can really go deep in some topics, might be CSRD, might be target setting, might be challenges that you face, and they give guidance. They give guidance to experts. They talk directly to the experts of the company who are driving the topic. This guidance helps, but it's also strong encouragement. That means we are behind you, we support you. We are going to be with you on the journey. So that really, really helps us. In the other direction, in the board, in the executive board with my colleagues, so for sure we have a lot of business topics. When we set our net zero pathway last year, we made the commitment to become climate positive by 2045 as a company. It required also a lot of time investment. We had to level the playing field. We have two business units which are extremely different, B2B, B2C. You can imagine that having common ambition on two businesses which are so different is difficult.
So it took
several rounds of education, of alignment, of creating the narrative together, deciding how we're going to communicate that to the organization, and then taking responsibility collectively to bring this narrative in the organization and to pave the way for the teams to commit and to really execute this pathway. So it all comes back to strong governance, time investment. It doesn't come without effort.
Time investment and also allowing time. I mean,
exactly.
It takes time to take bold
It's a very humbling topic, very humbling. You need to learn permanently.
Thank you so much. Marie-Claire?
Alors, very quickly, for me, 3 points. The first, it was already mentioned, it's about training. But I will say specific training, which are also on the ground, because it's great to have experts, to have people that come to speak and to raise awareness. But I think when you are at the level of the board, it's really very important to see what does it mean on the ground in link with the business side. And I'm very, I will say happy, because I am at the board of NG and also Crédit Agricole, but we do the same thing for Kering, and I would like to say welcome to 2 board members of Kering in the audience, so hello girls. I think it's very important that it's organized to see, take example of sustainability, what does it mean for the resilience of the supply chain? So one thing. Second thing, it's very linked also with the chairman or the chairwoman to be sure that the directors will be enough comfortable to say what they think and to dare to challenge, because sometimes there is the theoretical approach and the reality.
It is so true, because in corporates we talk a lot about the CEO and the role of boards. We are starting to discuss the role of the chair, but it is not there yet so much tackled.
So that's why I think for the second point, when we think about the board, I think the chairman has a specific role to play, and to be sure, okay, directors, if you don't agree, please express. It's really freedom to express, and after, it's a collective approach. And last but not least, I think also what is very important is to have transparency between the executive management and the board. So when there is a failure, when there is, I will say, something that goes wrong, to be sure that even if by rules or by regulation the executive management is not obliged to share and to be transparent, because it's important to have trust. And sometimes it's difficult also to build the trust because, as you mentioned, one of the key roles to the board is really to identify the CEO and also people from the executive committee. So the most important thing for me is trust. And of course, after you train people, you explain. But it's more, I will say, technical things and technical things. We have answers. What is more difficult, it's trust.
Yes. Francisco?
I wanted to go back to the training part and to think about why that is important in the context of the discussion that we're having and some of the things that have been mentioned and also Paul mentioned before, which is this notion that most of the people that are here are already with the right mindset, but many don't have yet either the right mindset, or even if they have the right mindset, they may not have kind of the actionable approach that they can do. And this is something that is quite important and kind of the approach that we take into the way that we think about training the boards, which is part of that. I mean, in particular, this issue of going from compliance, for example, into competitiveness is a very important shift. And thinking about what does that mean, show examples, share with others, is a very important part of that change of mindset and making the board comfortable with that shift and understanding what that means. You know, of course, when we do it at a high level and then bringing it to the specifics of the board about what does that mean for my company, for my context, for my aspect. The other aspect that's quite important, and I think is going to become even more heightened in these, is navigating dilemmas, which is another of the topics that we bring to our board program. The first one is, you know, Subi Rangan that typically teaches the one of going from basically compliance into competitiveness, and that Mark Menestrel that teaches the one on navigating dilemmas. And this is quite important because of the challenge that we face. I mean, it's very clear, and this is the reason that connects to the trust point that you were making, that there's going to be difficult decisions to be made. And so that trust is the foundation, but then you think about how do you navigate that? How do you do that between the executive side, between the board side? How do you create that dialogue is going to be quite important, and preparing boards to be able to do that.
Thank you.
And again, to do it in a way that's grounded. And for example, I'll give you one snippet of that. I mean, there's a lot of basically talk about CSRD and what CSRD means, but we're finding on the data that CSRD is making a difference on the way that boards and companies address and deal with sustainability from that competitiveness point of view, and that's a very important part to do.
We have a screen here, and it says time out, time out, time out. So one word about what it takes as a leader to make the shift happen. One word, skill, whatever, one word.
Collective mindset.
Team exercise.
Resilience.
Courage.
Thank you. That's my word. Thank you so much to every one of you. Bravo.